Welcome back, focused learners. I'm so thrilled to have you here for another explainer. We're jumping right in today because we are taking a truly fascinating look at a piece of writing by an author named Salima. In her recent weekly Receipts newsletter, she explores this profound concept that, honestly, impacts every single one of us, whether we realize it or not. The core objective of our explainer today is simple, but absolutely crucial: finding true peace through the complete elimination of ambiguity in our lives. We're going to look at exactly how we accidentally let chaos into our days, and more importantly, how we can build a permanent firewall against it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a bit of a mystery. What do a bad tenant and a missed goodbye have in common? On the surface, these sound like completely isolated events from totally different universes, right? One is a frustrating logistical business problem, and the other is this painful, highly personal, emotional slight. But as Salima discovered in her own life this past week, they are actually symptoms of the exact same underlying disease. And that disease is what she calls leaks. So a leak is the quiet loss of money or emotional energy due to unexpressed expectations. While a bad tenant and a missed goodbye seem entirely unrelated, they share the exact same root problem: small, unexamined leaks in how we manage our boundaries. You see, when we don't clearly state what we expect from people, either in business or in a friendship, we slowly bleed out resources. We lose our time, we lose our money, and eventually, we lose our peace of mind.
Section 1. The cost of ambiguity.
When we leave things unsaid, or we just kind of assume that other people know what we expect of them, we're literally setting a trap for ourselves. I really want you to focus on this brilliant insight from her writing. Ambiguity always costs the person with the most at stake. Just think about that for a second. When you're the one running a business, or you're the one deeply invested in a friendship, you have the most to lose. If there are no set rules, no clear boundaries, the person who stands to lose the most always, and I mean always, ends up paying the price. The other person can just walk away blissfully unaware while you're left holding the bag.
Section 2. The rental business leak.
To see exactly how this plays out in the real world, let's look at Exhibit A. Salima manages a family rental property back in Guinea, and she recently had to deal with a tenant moving out. Now, her nephew handles the ground operations locally, so she checked in, asked if everything was under control, and he said yes. She took him at his word. But because she relied on vague assurances rather than a rigid system, we get this disastrous timeline. Step 1, the tenant leaves. Step 2, the keys are somehow not collected by the nephew, which forces Salima to call the tenant herself. Step 3, the security deposit is inexplicably returned to the tenant way too early. And finally, Step 4, the property is inspected, but way too late. This just vividly maps out the cascading failure of operating a business based merely on trust and assumptions rather than a strict checklist. Because by the time the engineer actually went into the house, the damage was already done.
And that damage, it wasn't just hypothetical. Hit this number in your mind: $200. That represents the very real physical cost of this ambiguity. The tenant hadn't just moved out, he had completely uninstalled and removed his air conditioning unit. And in the process, he ripped out the voltage boosters from the wall. These were permanent fittings, but they were gone. Over $200 vanished, simply because there was no system in place to check the house before handing back the cash.
But the leak wasn't just at the move-out. It was happening the entire time this tenant lived there. Listen to the absolute chaos of the old way of doing things. Every single month, the tenant had a new story. He was on a trip to India, or he was stuck in a meeting with an accountant, or there was some big business deal in progress. And what was the result every single time? Late rent. Salima was constantly on the phone, listening to these endless stories and absorbing all these excuses. But being highly empathetic didn't actually help the tenant pay on time. It just magically transformed the tenant's late rent into Salima's personal stressful problem. And this brilliantly illustrates the night and day difference when you finally take control. The old, chaotic method relied on trust, endless phone calls, and absorbing excuses. It was highly emotional and honestly exhausting. But the new system, it is beautifully strict and entirely emotionless. It guarantees clarity. Now there are move-in checklists for every single room and electric point. There are photos signed by both parties. The deposit isn't released until after a thorough inspection. And rent, it's due on the 5th of the month. If you miss it, the formal process begins. No phone calls, no stories, no exceptions.
Section 3. The invisible transaction.
Now let's shift gears and look at how ambiguity leaks our emotional energy. We're moving from literal business logistics into a deep, highly relatable emotional reality. This brings us to a story involving a coworker of Salima's, who we'll just call Lee. So here's the setup. One rainy evening, Salima is ordering a taxi to the train station. Lee, her coworker, asks to share the ride. When they arrive, Lee asks how much her share of the fare is. Salima waves it off and says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It was just a few dollars, right?" A tiny, seemingly insignificant moment. But fast forward to this past Friday. It is Lee's absolute last day at the company. She walks around the entire floor, saying personal goodbyes to every single person in the room, except Salima. She walks right past her. Salima felt this unexpected, painful sting. Her immediate internal thought was, wait, after I paid that taxi fare for you?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what Salima calls an invisible transaction. This is a transaction with invisible terms, where one person is ostensibly being kind, but they're actually doing it to earn unrecognized loyalty. Salima realized that nobody actually asked her to pay for that ride. Lee was perfectly willing to split it. Salima was the one who said no, and she said no because she was quietly making an unspoken investment. She wanted to be remembered as kind, to matter to this person, to earn something she was just too proud to ask for directly.
You cannot feel cheated by a deal you made alone. Man, this is such a profound truth. The other person, in this case Lee, never actually agreed to the terms of this emotional transaction. She couldn't possibly honor a debt she didn't even know she owed. When we create these silent expectations in our heads, and people inevitably fail to meet them, we just end up deeply hurt by our very own uncommunicated rules.
Section 4. Peace is a system.
Bringing our two case studies together reveals the grand unifying theme of this entire explainer. Whether you're dealing with real estate in Guinea or navigating quirky office dynamics, the solution is exactly the same. To achieve peace, Salima remembered a life rule she had temporarily forgotten. When you expect a thank you, don't do it. It's such a direct, powerful application of this philosophy. If there's any part of you that is secretly expecting a return on your investment, whether that's gratitude, loyalty, or just a simple goodbye on a Friday afternoon, you have to either name it honestly out loud or you have to let the action go entirely. There is simply no middle ground that doesn't eventually cost you your peace.
When you look at them side by side, you can really see how the unexamined life leaks in both directions. Over in business, you absorb late rent and release deposits too early because you avoid tough conversations. In your emotional life, you waive ride fares, swallow words you probably should have said, and build up silent resentment. Both of these are caused by the exact same bad habit, the quiet management of other people's behavior through unspoken rules.
So the crucial point is that we actually have the power to stop this chaos right now. Here is your definitive action plan. Step 1, find the leaks. Where are you quietly losing energy or money? Step 2, build business systems. Stop relying on trust and start relying on checklists and signed agreements. And step 3, practice relationship honesty. Stop making invisible deals with your friends and coworkers.
Because ultimately peace is a system. Salima notes that she pays her own rent 3 months in advance, and her landlord receives the money without a single conversation. That is what a clean system looks like. Deliberate, documented clarity is the only thing that actually protects us. It frees us from resentment, and it frees the people around us from having to constantly guess what we want.
I want to leave you with this challenge. Think back on your last 7 days. If you went through your own emotional and financial receipts from this week, where would you find your leaks? Where did you swallow your words? Where did you avoid making a rule crystal clear? Take a hard look, plug those leaks, and start building your system for peace today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, focused learners. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll see you next time.